All right, today we're going to begin our discussion of the Byzantine Empire. This is an empire that starts as a Greek city-state called Byzantium, but it's eventually going to emerge as the Eastern Roman Empire or the Byzantine Empire. After the Western Empire, the empire located in Rome, collapses, this is going to continue to exist for about 1,000 years. So in the year 294, the Roman Empire is divided by Diocletian, and you can kind of see this map on here shows you how it was divided between Constantius, Maximian, Diocletian, and Galerius. Each one is kind of in charge of their own area. Constantine was a Caesar, and Galerius was a Caesar, while Maximian and Diocletian were Augustuses. But it's not going to last long. The thought here originally was that the empire would continue to be Roman, and each section of this would be governed by their own little Caesar, but they would be cooperating as part of the Roman Empire. Soon, one of these guys, Constantine, is going to emerge as the preeminent emperor. Constantine is going to decide that he wants the whole empire by himself. Constantine is going to go to war against Maximian. According to legend, he sees the sign of God burning in the sky, and he orders his people to paint this sign on their shields. They painted the sign of God on their shields, and Constantine wins this glorious battle and unites at least the Eastern Empire together. We've always assumed, or it's always kind of been presented, that the sign of God was the crucifix, because Constantine is known as the first Christian emperor. Constantine converts to Christianity on his deathbed. But there's some question about that today, since Constantine was also a high priest in the Temple of Sol, or the Temple of the Sun. Then, if you know that and you hear the story of seeing the sign of God burning in the sky and painting it on their shield, it makes you wonder, did they paint a cross or did they paint the sun on the shield? Historians will argue about it. I kind of suspect that they painted the sun. That doesn't take away from the fact that Constantine was the first Christian emperor. He made Christianity the uniting religion of the empire. Therefore, the Eastern Roman Empire was, in fact, the first Christian empire. Constantine moves the capital from Rome, that's Rome over there on Italy, this place shaped like a boot there, over to the old Greek city of Byzantium, renaming it after himself, Constantinople or Constantinopolis, which just means the city of Constantine. What else is going to allow the Byzantine Empire, the empire located at Constantinople, to be successful is that the barbarians are going to invade much heavier in the Western Empire than they do in the East. If you see this map, you can see the Franks, the Goths, the Vandals, the Lombards. They're all invading very heavily into the Western Empire, into what's today France, Germany, Italy, even into modern Spain and into modern Great Britain. But most of them are not invading into the Byzantine Empire. That area is going to exist for another 1,000 years. And it's not going to be until much, much later when they're invaded by an Islamic empire, the Ottoman Turks, that's going to take over this region. Today it's Turkey, but it was Byzantine back then. And it's going to be part of the Ottoman Empire. This is a map of Constantinople. Constantinople was on an ideal location out on the Bosporus. It controls all the trade between Asia, Africa, and Europe. You've got to go past Constantinople to do this. They used a series of walls and moats to protect the city. You can see in this map here on your left as you're looking at it that there was a wall around it. There was also, again, a series of moats there. It was located on this peninsula that we call the Golden Horn that sticks out into the Bosporus. It was a well-established city. It had the most beautiful church in the world, a place called the Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom. It also had the Hippodrome, which I guess could best be compared to like a modern sports stadium or the Colosseum in Rome. It's where the people gathered to see sporting events and anything else that was a large arena style event. Here's a more modern picture taken from the Bosporus, looking on at the Golden Horn at the Hagia Sophia. The Hagia Sophia originally wouldn't have had those minarets on it. Those were added later on during the Ottoman Empire, when it stopped being a Christian church and it became an Islamic mosque. I want to talk about a couple of the key individuals in this time period. Emperor Justinian, who ruled from 527 to 564. This is a mosaic of Emperor Justinian, and it's very characteristic of Greek style art or Byzantine style art. A mosaic is made by placing inlaid colored stones together to create this artistic site. And this is a mosaic of Emperor Justinian. And you can tell that Justinian was considered to be not just a political leader, but also a religious leader because of the halo around his head in that painting or that mosaic. We see that a lot in Greek and Roman, and later on we'll see it in the Middle Ages art and in the Renaissance and Reformation art. You're going to see this. And originally, we believe the halo would have been a symbol for members of the Church of Saul because it was the sun behind them. But it gets adopted into Christianity and as a way to show that a man was highly religious. He was married to a brilliant woman, Empress Theodora. You can see that she has the halo around her head as well in this mosaic. Theodora is an interesting character. She came from the less than noble class. I won't say peasant class, but not nobility. But she was this stunningly beautiful woman who traveled with what was essentially a traveling circus or carnival. And she was so beautiful that she impressed Justinian. He married her, and she becomes this great, powerful leader who fought hard for women's rights under Justinian. This is a picture of the Byzantine Empire at 565. Under Justinian, it reached its peak. The Byzantine Empire would have dominated all of what's today the Eastern Roman Empire and most of what becomes the Western Empire. So this is the largest the Byzantine Empire ever was before they lost control of Rome and Spain for that matter too. Just another picture of the Hagia Sophia. Think about the architectural stylings of this and how incredible it was that they were able to build this building with that dome, that free-floating dome coming over them. It's a massive, massive structure. This is from the inside of the Hagia Sophia. Again, it used to be a Christian church, so it's got a lot of Christian iconography in it. However, a lot of this iconography has been overlaid with Muslim iconography. I don't have an example of it on here, but there's lots of examples of Muslim iconography as well. So what is Justinian famous for? His largest accomplishment is passing the body of civil law. The Corpus Juris Civilis literally means body of civil law. Corpus means body, civilis, civilian, people, and juris, legal. So the body of legal law or body of civilian law. Divided into three parts: the digest, the code, and the institutes. For our purpose, Justinian's code was just a code of law that was established and governed the entire Eastern Orthodox Empire, or the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantines are going to be constantly under attack from places like the Sassanid Empire in Persia. Later on, the Ottoman Empire, the Lombards, the Slavs. They're all going to be attacking into this region, particularly starting in the 6th century. So that's the 500s, okay? All right, so we will stop our discussion there on the Byzantine Empire. I just kind of want to share with you a couple of stories about Justinian and his wife Theodora. Theodora, I mentioned earlier that she fought hard for women's rights in this time period. One of the things that she did is she said that women could divorce their husbands. Before this, men could get a divorce, but women couldn't request it. They could only accept a divorce if it was something that a man wanted. But beyond that, when they got a divorce, women didn't have to turn their children over to their husbands as they would have before. So there's rights for women. Women also got to leave the marriage with treasure equal to their dowry. The dowry is the value that a bride brings into a marriage. It's usually a gift that's given by the bride's husband upon marriage to make the marriage more comfortable. Well, she gets to take whatever she brought in with her in the case of a divorce. That's a big step forward. When Justinian is overran and Constantinople's overrun by invaders, Justinian's first instinct was to flee. But his wife Theodora talks him into, stay. You need to stay behind. You need to act like a proper emperor and allow the army to defend you. And the army was led by a guy named Belisarius, who it's speculated was a lover to Theodora. So she kind of talks her boyfriend into defending her husband, and he comes in and puts that revolution down. We call this the Nika Rebellion, Nika. When the Nika Rebellion is put down, Justinian emerges as an even stronger emperor. Justinian is remembered as the strongest of the emperors, but he leaves an empire that is divided by religion and by culture and surrounded by enemies. And from the end of Justinian's period on, the empire is going to be under constant attack until finally it just completely collapses. And today there's nothing left of the Byzantine Empire except the ruins, mostly in the modern nation of Turkey.